Hello there and welcome to a CG Weasel After Effects tutorial. First of all, this is not gonna be a designer tutorial, okay? So you're not gonna learn anything about design here, as you probably can see on the screen. This is a workflow tutorial. What I would like to introduce to you is a method to speed up your workflow whenever you come across some repetitive types or repetitive animations. And as a motion designer, you always have to be aware that the customer or your art director or whoever is going to come by and wants changes. And then, especially on repetitive types of animation, this can be a huge pain in the butt. So what I would like to show you today is a method to speed this workflow up and be ready for whatever they're gonna throw at you. Now, first of all, let's take a look at the little animation I prepared here. It's quite simple. It's just a bunch of rectangles jumping up, doing a spin and coming back down with a little bit of a squash and stretch. A lot of times I see freelancers or co-workers of mine doing this kind of animation. They create one rectangle, they animate it. Let's solo this for a second. They animate it and then they start duplicating it, which is totally fine and totally works well. So what you end up with is actually this, a bunch of layers, and in this case it's only 15. I mean, I've been in situations where I had like 150 of those, and every single one of them has the keyframes on it. Now, yes, of course this works, but what happens if your customer comes in and says he wants some changes? Like, he wants the spin to be shorter and faster and start later and stuff like that. Now you're gonna select all single keyframes because this rotation is not on the real rotation, it's on the rotation of the rectangle, which is not gonna be revealable with R. And going through this and selecting every single one of those might be fine. Well, no, not really if you think about it, with 15 layers, but it's totally not with 150 or even 20 or 25 layers. So the other way you could do it is you just more or less start over. So you delete all of those, you make your changes right there. Bam, later, faster. That's better. And now you're gonna do it over again. You start duplicating and you select one. In this case, you just scoop it over, select all of them, distribute them, and you're more or less good to go. And you just use something like Sortie to sort them, and use something like Rift to stagger them, and there you are again. You're fine. And you change the animation. That didn't take too long. Well, no, because this is a simple one. In cases where you don't just can like distribute them evenly with the align tool, but they have to be at certain places, this is just gonna be a huge pain. And I mean, it's not over there. Then he comes back and you say, hey, look, is now the spin better? Yeah, it's kind of better, but can we like emphasize the squash and stretch at the end a little bit? And you're like, yeah, of course we can. And then you're gonna do it all over again. You delete, you animate, you duplicate and stuff like that. This is not my preferred way of doing stuff. So, this is more my preferred way of doing stuff. This is the exact same animation. But, if I hit U, I only have those keyframes. And everything I do right now on those keyframes translates over to all the other ones. So if I take this, you can see I have a live update of my animation going along. I don't even have to stagger with Rift. I have it on a controller. So if you want this not to be staggered by 1 frame, but let's say by 5 frames, I'll just type in 5 and everything is offset by 5 frames. And now I don't really care how often my art director comes back and has some minor changes to it, because it's all done on the fly. He can even sit next to me and just watch me doing it. A couple of you might be sitting there right now and say, yeah, why don't you just use pre-comps? Well, there's nothing really wrong with pre-comps, but I tend to use only pre-comps then whenever they tend to make the most sense of it. Whenever I use a pre-comp, then I have to go into the pre-comp to change the animation and come back out and check how everything looks. So just the benefit here is that I have a live updates whenever I start moving stuff around. Like, you see, I just change the animation and everything just happens on the fly, and I can see if stuff is lining up or not, or does it look the way I want it. So this is definitely a benefit. And on the other hand is you're still free whenever you use shape layers that, well, I want to change this one up. I don't want it to be teal. Let's make it dark green or something like that. So this, you can't do this with a pre-comp. I still have control over the stroke, over the size and everything. Not using pre-comps here is just one way to preserve more flexibility to me and having the same effect as using a pre-comp by using expressions. So this was a pretty long intro. So I would say let's hop right in, create it from scratch so you see everything that's going on here. Okay, here we are in our main setup. We got a background, we got our shape layer going on right here. I do have the animation already on it because this is not what this is all about. Just to show you the animation, on our scale property, we're gonna do some squash and stretch at the beginning and bomb here at the end. Then we have a Y position, which is obviously letting it jump and coming back down, also with some emphasis on it. And then within the rectangular transform properties here, we have on the rotation, because the anchor point is the anchor point of the layers at the bottom, so I didn't want it to rotate around here, so I used this rotation to rotate it around the middle. Okay, so now we have the rotation here and then it comes back down. This is a, let's call it nonsense animation, but it does the trick to just show you what I mean. Now, first thing is best practice, always name your layers. So we're gonna call this master. So we know this is our master layer with the animation on it. And now we think ahead already. So let's create a null object and we're gonna call this controller, because we're gonna put controls on it. It's actually only one control, but you know, slider control, and we're gonna rename this to offset per frame, and we're good to go on that one. I'm gonna lock this because I know we're not gonna use any other effects right now. Now let's get to the next step, which would be duplicating our master layer. And I'm just gonna call this one slave. Now let's hop into the slave and just delete all the keyframes. Boom. Also, what you can see is I separated my dimensions on the position properties. I usually always do this because it just, I don't know, I'm used to it and most of the time it just saves me trouble. Let's scoop this over so we can see stuff. And now let's just start with some expressions, I say. Since we're here, let's start with the position. Now we alt click on the stopwatch of the Y position property and we're gonna open our expression window. And now we're gonna start typing some stuff, which of course I'm gonna explain to you what it all means. First of all, this is not necessary what I'm gonna do right now, but it is best practice just to keep your expressions readable, understandable, easy to adjust and stuff like that. So at first we're gonna create a variable, which we call I, and we're gonna assign some properties to it. So I is going to stand for index in this one right there. So what we're gonna do is we call the index of this layer, which you can see right there. So the index of this layer is 3. Whenever you type index, After Effects is just gonna pull the index of this layer you're typing it on. So we have an index of 3, but this is not the index we actually want. What we use the index for is to determine the position of this layer within the whole repetitive animation. This will make sense in a little bit. So what we else need is the index of our master layer, since he's the first one. So we use the pick whip right here and we just pick whip the master and type dot index. So what After Effects is pulling now is pulling the index of our master layer. So this comp, which is this comp, then the layer called master, and of this layer we want the index. The index is 2. So our index of 3 subtracted by the index of 2 equals 1. As I said, this is gonna make sense here in a little bit. So the other variable we wanna declare is called offset. And our offset is what we created on the controller. So we use our pick whip and we just pick whip the slider here. So we don't have to type all of this by ourselves. So it's this comp layer controller, which is right there. The effect of this controller is called offset per frame, and we want the value of the slider. We're gonna leave this right there and we're probably gonna come back to it. But for now, let's create the actual expression, which is gonna do the magic. So what we're gonna pick whip is the Y position of the master, because we actually want to duplicate this, right? Now this comp layer master dot transform dot Y position is gonna give us, well, the exact same thing as the master. If you just pick with this, then it's gonna do the exact same thing, which is kind of fine, but it's not really helping us since we want to stagger those in time. And to actually have access to the time wherever the animation is happening on the master layer, we need to add some property to our expression. And this property is called valueAtTime. And now we have access to the time the animation is played on, and we can actually alter it. So if we just put in time here, nothing is gonna change. It's always gonna copy the master values. Even though if we offset this, it's always gonna copy the master values. Now what we need, and that's what it's there for, is the offset. So we want to subtract the offset from the time of the master. So we're gonna start staggering. So we put minus offset. Now let's put a 1 in here. And we see that we are changing stuff, but not quite the way we wanted it to. So we're staggering. Yes, of course we do. This is fine. This is totally a step in the right direction. Now if we duplicate this, well, they are all kinda doing the same thing. They're not really staggering because they are now all offset by exactly 1, which is 1 second. So let's go back and adjust our expression. First of all, I don't want 1 to be 1 second. I want 1 to be 1 frame. And to make this clear to After Effects, we're gonna have to adjust our offset variable here. So what we need is the value that comes from our slider needs to be multiplied with the time 1 frame takes within your comp. So just to make this variable, whenever you change the comp frames per second, so even if it's 24, 25, 30, 60, whatever, this will adjust automatically. We have to multiply it by the time of 1 frame. And this is just called this comp dot frame duration. So now having this, the 1 on our slider does not represent 1 second anymore, but 1 frame, as you can see here. So the Y position starts here, and on 1 frame later, the Y position of our slave starts. So we have now an offset of 1 frame, which is awesome. But still we're having the problem whenever I start duplicating this, we're not having more offsets. This is where our index comes in. So on our offset, we're gonna hit times I. And why we're doing this is because index gives us the position of our layer within the animation. So this one here, as we already know, is I is gonna be 1 because it's the first slave after the master. So we have our frame, which is this one here. It's 1 frame, and now it gets multiplied by 1, which is still 1 frame. But if I duplicate this now we have the index of 4 minus the index of our master, which is 2, which gives us an I of 2. Now we are having an offset of 1 frame times 2. So this is 2 frames. And that's how it's automatically staggering in time because of the multiplication of the index. So right now, let's scoop this one over a little bit. This is starting 1 frame later again. So it's starting 2 frames later than the master. And we can even alter this one here. If the first one now starts 2 frames later than the master, then the other one is gonna start 4 frames later than the master. Bam. And that's it. So of course this took a couple of minutes now with explanation and stuff like that. But once you know this expression and you know what you're doing, to write this takes you not even a minute. And now what we can do is just take all of this, we just copy the whole expression. Let's delete this one first. Let's go back to our scale properties, alt click on it, paste the expression because it's almost the same. And now all we do is we mark this one right before the dot of valueAtTime, and we just use a pick whip and pick whip the scale. And he's gonna change it to scale. We could also type this, but you know. And now this is also working. Boom, now the scale has an offset of 2 because we still have a 2 in our offset slider here. Make this 1 again. And this is working. And now let's go over to our rectangle content, rectangle transformation and rotation. Put this in here. And we just mark this and pick whip this, and that's pretty much it. And now they're offsetting by 1. And that's the whole magic. And now all you do is, same as before, you set it up once. Let's take the last one. Put this over here. Distribute them and sort them. And now we should be there. That's it. We're done. Now the setup is done. This didn't take too long, and it's certainly much faster once you know what you're doing and know how to write the expression, and you're ready to go. And then, yeah, let your customer come and say, oh, can we I don't know, make the whole animation of all of it faster? Yeah, of course we can. That's no problem. We just scoop that over and we just scoop that over and keep it and yeah, that's it. Done. You want anything else? Oh, you want to change the rotation on it? Yeah, of course we can change the rotation. We can change the rotation like this if you want to. Yeah, I'm fine with that. And if you're not on a crappy PC like I am, then you actually have a decent preview. So we can just do it like that. So, and that's it. And everything is set up and you can just do changes. And yeah. Oh, you want more staggering? Yeah, no problem. We got that. And it's all live and easy and boom. And you're flexible. And you're gonna save yourself so much time and nerves. Believe me, I've been there. And this is why I just love this way of staggering stuff and doing the animations. And this is the simplest way. I mean, there are more complex setups than this one, which lets you do much more in terms of staggering and the animation itself and stuff. I mean, even if those were not on the exact same positions and everything, and you know, like have certain and very special positions, there's no need to redo all of this just because there's a change in the animation. It just stays there. And then, well, whatever that is now, and change some colors, and it's just all easy. You don't have to worry about anything. It's just animation changes. Yeah, of course, we go into the master and we just change the animation, but everything stays where it is. And we put motion blur back on it. Actually, it kind of looks decent. Yeah, so that's it. And I really hope this helped you out, that you learned something. It's probably gonna save you tons of time in every workflow, from icon animation to complex motion graphics and stuff. Feel free to leave any comments below if you know any other techniques or even better techniques and stuff. Also, please comment if you want to know more about expression. I'm dying for those, and I really think everybody who uses After Effects should know more expressions than just the wheel. So please comment down below, and if you liked it, hit the like button and maybe even subscribe to our channel, and then I see you some other time. Stay smart.